Welcome back. So we'll be starting with if statements, and if statements have a very simple structure. Now the general structure for an if statement is just having an if it's a keyword, then open brackets, you have a condition, close brackets, you open your curly bracket which represents the body or a group of code, and you close that bracket, and in here you have your lines of code. Okay, so this is just the general structure of your if statements. Now what happens is, in an if statement, your condition can either be true or false, and if this condition is true, whatever code you have in your if statement will get executed. But if the condition turns out to be false, every single thing in the body will be ignored and will not be executed at all by your program. Now we can see a brief example of that. Remember, this is placed inside comments, so this parts of code will not get executed. So let's see a simple example of an if statement. So an if statement could look something like this. If, okay, let me just quickly open this. Now let's go to our condition. What should be our condition? Well, our condition is simply a logical expression that can be resolved to true. We've seen logical expressions before, and we say that you can either get true or false from them, and really we just need a true or a false for your condition here. So what can we check? We can check something like is 2 greater than 5, or is 10 equals to 11. Okay, all those comparisons that we've seen before. And I'll try one. Is 5 greater than 3? And of course, in your mind you're already saying, of course 5 is greater than 3. But let's see what our program has to say about that. So if 5 is greater than 3, in our body here, I'm just going to do a document dot write line. It is greater. Okay, you can have any output there, but for now I just want to print out a string saying it is greater. If I save this and refresh, we can see it is greater. So your code gets executed, it gets to this line, and there's an if statement with a condition. So it tries to evaluate the condition, and it checks, is 5 greater than 3? And yes, 5 is actually greater than 3, so this expression becomes true, and since it is true, the if statement gets executed. However, if I should make it false, for instance, is 5 greater than 30? We of course know that no, 5 isn't greater than 30, so that means this expression will resolve to false. If I save that and refresh, now we don't see anything. What happened? Because 5 is not greater than 30, this expression resolves to false, and once it becomes false, the if statement no longer gets executed and it is completely ignored, and we don't see any output from this if statement, and your program just keeps executing to whatever it's next. But what if we want something to get executed when it is actually false? Well, your if statement doesn't just end here. You can put an alternative condition to this. And how do you do that? Well, we have what we call an if else statement, which is basically an if statement that has an else body as well. So how does that look like? Well, if we go back to the structure here, you just add an else block. Else, open brackets, and this is just how it goes. So what happens? If your condition is true, whatever code you have in the if body gets executed. But if it's not true, and that means it's false, whatever is in the else body gets executed. But like we have seen, if you don't have an else body, it only checks if it is true, and if it's true, the if statement gets executed. If it is false, it ignores it completely. So basically, the if statement, the if block, which is this, is for when an expression is true, while if the else block is for when the expression is false. So in this case, I would add an else statement here, and in here I want to write document dot write line, it is lesser. So if 5 is greater than 30, we should see it is greater, but if it is not and this is false, we should see it is lesser. If I should save this, refresh, now we can see it is lesser because 5 is lesser than 30. If I should change 5 to 50, now is 50 greater than 30? Yes, of course, 50 is greater than 30, which means this is true. And so we should see it is greater.